Hey guys, I want to share with you some changes that I've seen here in China over the past 2 decades. For those of you that don't know me, my name's Will. I run a YouTube channel called Monkey Steals Peach, where I've spent the last 7 years or so documenting martial arts throughout China and elsewhere in Asia. I've recently started the second channel, Monkey Exits Cave, to just share some other aspects of my life here in China, talk about the society, culture, touch on geopolitics a little bit, just share some other things. As to my background, I first came to China in 2007 when I was 18 years old. I originally lived in Shandong province, first in Qingdao and then in Yantai. 2015 I moved here to Shanghai. I was here until 2020, then I moved to Australia for 5 years and recently came back earlier this year. So, during that time I've seen a hell of a lot of change here in China. And there's a lot of videos talking about China these days. Quite frankly, they're incredibly polarized. Every video you see about China is either, China's the best place on earth, it's a socialist paradise, or China's an absolute totalitarian dystopia. I want to share a more nuanced view, agenda-free, just share, what I see, what I experience, what it's actually like living here. So one of the big things that I've seen since 2007 to now is a kind of ebb and flow in how open China has been to the outside world, and particularly to Western ideas, Western thinking, Western media. When I first came here in 2007, it was very open. A phrase that was very common back then was 崇洋媚外, which means to admire and look up to everything foreign. You used to see that a lot of government officials like to build these big European-style villas out in the countryside, just away from the cities. Golf courses, big luxurious European-style golf courses were a big thing. If you go to people's homes that made a lot of money in that time, they have a lot of this very sort of extravagant French-style furniture that looks like you've just walked into, the Louvre or some Parisian palace. Chandeliers and great big leather sofas and, incredibly fancy crystal wine glasses. So there was really a sense of everything in the West is best back then. And, a lot of young people used to really love American TV shows. Prison Break was just coming out when I first moved to China, and everyone in China was obsessed with Prison Break. A lot of Western music, Linkin Park and things like that, people used to love back then. And you could access all the social media. You could go on Facebook, you could go on Google, YouTube, you could read BBC and everything. And a lot of university students that were learning English, they would consume Western media a lot. They would spend a lot of time reading things like BBC and CNN to help their English. They would listen to the BBC World Service, Voice of America, things like that. There's definitely very, very open time. And then I think it was 2009 or so, Facebook and Google were blocked here in China. And then there was a gradual kind of erosion of any presence of Western media, to the point we're at now, where it's very difficult for any foreign journalists to get credentials to come and report on the ground here in China. And pretty much all foreign media is blocked unless you have a VPN, which honestly is very easy to get. But there's definitely been this very big change on that front. But something kind of on the flip side that I've noticed is that I don't know if that's directly a cause of it, or if it's just as people's living standards have got higher, which is another point I'll get to later, and they've got more disposable income. But I've definitely, especially since coming back to China this year, a big resurgence in interest in traditional culture. They've been putting a lot of money into renovating and developing a lot of these old historical towns and villages. They're doing them up for tourism. Yes, it can be tacky and cheesy at times, but at least they are restoring it and generating interest in making making Chinese people want to go and explore, their own history, their own culture. There's been a big uptake in traditional crafts, traditional kind of workmanship. With Chinese social media, there's a lot of these people that have become pretty famous doing quite obscure things, and you follow the lives of some Mongolian nomads, and then you can now buy, they do their live streams and their vlogs about their life on the grasslands, and then they start to sell products that they make on the grasslands, and then they can ship them out by courier all over China. So it's making a lot of this traditional culture more accessible to people. I'm seeing people are getting very, very much into it. They're kind of following this Japanese trend of wearing traditional clothing a lot. I start to see a lot of Chinese people, like women, wearing qipaos and hanfu, which is the ancient style clothing. See a lot of guys wearing traditional Chinese shirts. It's definitely a big uptake in the interest in traditional culture, and the kind of re-emergence of traditional values is something that I can see the government here is actively promoting, albeit as long as it adheres to the principles of socialism with Chinese characteristics. So I want to just interrupt this video briefly to talk to you guys about a product that I use quite a lot myself. Now, I think you know me well enough by now to know that I would not endorse just anything. If I'm going to promote something, it's only going to be something that I truly believe in and something that I genuinely do use myself. Some of you may know that I also work as a journalist and geopolitical analyst. And having this line of work has made me acutely aware of the biases that are present in a lot of mainstream media reporting on world events. And as such, it becomes harder to know what's really going on and to separate reality from the narratives that are being spun. And so one of the products that I use to get around that is something called Ground News. Ground News is an app and website that combines news from around the world in one place so you can compare coverage. For every news source, you can see if they have a political bias, how reliable their reporting is, and who owns them. You can verify your information and know where the news is coming from. With Ground News, you can see what the media is exaggerating, sensationalizing, over or under reporting. You can see who funds each publication, compare coverage, and think critically about the information you consume. Go to check.ground.news/monkeystealspeach to check it out now. If you subscribe for my link, you get 40% off the Vantage subscription. Now, the other way in which I've seen China change is, I have to say, objectively, living standards have improved hugely since 2007. You cannot deny that with, whatever you think of the direction that China's taking, or, any other aspects, you cannot deny that living standards here have just improved massively. The amount of disposable income that your average Chinese person has gone up hugely. I mean, I'm not like an economist. I can't really give you stats or anything, but at least I can see that the average person, the typical Chinese person you see on the street, if you just look around here, most people have a reasonably decent life, and people are able to go and spend money on the things they want to. They're able to go out and eat in restaurants and go to cafes, and they're definitely, they have much more spending power than they used to have back when I first came here. This is absolutely undeniable. And this kind of leads into the third thing, which is just the speed at which technology has grown here. I mean, this was one thing that coming back to China this year just really blew me away, was from before COVID to now, this 5 years that I was away, 2020 to 2025, I used to see a few electric vehicles and things, WeChat payments and stuff, that was already a thing. But now, just the amount of technological infrastructure. I mean, electric vehicles are everywhere here in China. They have just completely taken over. I mean, there's one right there. Not only, they've got Teslas, there's a lot of Teslas around, but there's an equal, if not greater, number of Chinese electric vehicles. And I know there's lots of videos talking about the safety of them and things like that. It's not really something I can comment on, but at least as far as an emerging technology, you cannot deny that that's something that's pretty much popped out of nowhere, and is definitely going to revolutionize transport and revolutionize people's lives, and hopefully reduce emissions and things like that. With China having banned all the foreign social media, it enabled kind of like an ecosystem of native social media to grow and develop. And I mean, I'm not talking about access to information and censorship here. I'm just talking about, on a practical level, the impact that Chinese social media has on people's lives. The fact that everything's integrated into WeChat. You can use WeChat to do pretty much anything. You can, you can contact people with it. You can send money to your friends. You can pay for things in shops. You can use it to get on public transport. There's, all sorts of social media channels to watch videos on WeChat. Like, it is pretty much a one-stop shop for everything you need to do online. And so for your average Chinese person that probably isn't really even that aware of the ideas and things that are going on in, Western social media in the Western world, most Chinese honestly don't really care about some abstract, these kind of abstract ideas. Most care about tangible things in their life. And I think that the Chinese social media and smartphone, internet kind of ecosystem that they've built is something that pretty much all Chinese people that I've spoken to are massively impressed with and are very proud to show off. Now, one thing that I think hasn't really caught up with all of these rapid changes here in China, I've seen a lot of people on the internet saying that this is something that has changed, but I personally have not really seen it, is manners. This is by far my biggest criticism of China. It's not some abstract ideas of the system of governance that people live under or anything like that. My one biggest criticism of China is manners. And it's something that just really hasn't caught up with the changes in the economy, the changes in living standards, and even the education's got a lot better. Your average person's much less educated than they were, much more educated than they were 20 years ago. But I think this manners, people queuing to get on the bus or on the subway, queuing at the checkout, queuing to just get into anywhere, really. People are still pushing, shoving, trying to get in front of you. As soon as a seat becomes available on the subway or the bus, someone will just run and grab it as fast as they can. The spitting, like, people do just spit absolutely everywhere, and it's something that I find, quite frankly, quite repulsive. People still smoke. I mean, Shanghai has brought in a lot of laws regarding smoking in public spaces, but they are, honestly speaking, barely ever enforced. I mean, like the building where I live, some of the old neighbors, like the older guys, they smoke in the corridor. The smell comes right through. It comes under your door. Your apartment ends up smelling of cigarettes sometimes. People smoke in public toilets all the time. So every time you want to go for a pee, you're going to come out with your clothes smelling of cigarettes. I think this, a lot of these manners and sort of consideration for people around you is something that's still to come in China. I haven't seen it get particularly better, honestly. I know a lot of people on the internet say that they have, but I don't think my experience reflects that. This is a few things that I've seen, some changes or things that haven't changed. I've tried to mix in some positive and some negative, and I've tried to keep this, free of any agenda. As I said at the beginning, you know, a lot of videos on China can be incredibly polarized. You know, China's always being presented as either a socialist utopia where everything's perfect and there's no homeless people and everybody's happy. You know, it's also being shown as this totalitarian dystopia where, you know, everybody's suffering and, you know, living under the iron fist of the government. So, you know, I just wanted to show, honestly, like, without going into any sort of abstract ideas on what constitutes freedom, you know, what contributes the right way of governance, what contribute, you know, that sort of stuff. I just wanted to give some tangible things that I've seen here on the ground that reflect how China was in 2007 when I first came here, and how China is now in 2025. So I hope you guys enjoyed that. And yeah, let me know in the comments below if you've been to China, what your experience was like, what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.